Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's town hall. Michael Klein, I'm the director of the Charities and Legal Services Division at the Maryland Secretary of State's office. So today we're going to talk about the topic of professional solicitors, fundraising counsels, their registration requirements. And we're going to cover that. We're going to talk a little bit at first about what they are, and then the requirements thereof, and hopefully clarify a couple things up front before we get started here. Though, as we do on these town halls, we're going to talk. Just put yourself on mute if you could, please, to avoid any background noise if you're not already. And if you have any questions along the way, you can put them in the chat. One of our folks from our team may respond, or they may hold it off on responding and read it at the end, especially if it ends up being a commonly asked question that warrants some discussion at the end here of the town hall. Try to avoid giving other people answers, though, to their questions. Although that's so much an issue here on the charity side, but some of the other town halls we have some well-intentioned folks that try to answer other people's questions, but don't always answer them right. Let us answer them, and we'll do that. And hopefully this presentation will answer some questions you may have in this area. So this town hall is being recorded. Joining the town hall is consenting to participate in that recording. The recording will get posted on the charity page of the Secretary of State's website, usually within about a week or so of the town hall. We have it up a lot of times faster than that, but sometimes it takes up to a week to get it posted online. And so if you missed something on the town hall, or you didn't want to ask a question, or you want to go back and look at it later, it'll be posted on the charity homepage of the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.maryland.gov. SOS, like Secretary of State, .Maryland, spelled all the way out, .gov. That'll be posted there. And the other last thing to say here is the town hall's content is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be legal advice. Throwing out that disclaimer here as well. So again, appreciate you joining us today. We're going to talk about professional solicitors and fundraising counsel. And before we get too deep into that, just the law itself, what we do here at the Secretary of State's office is covered in the Maryland Solicitations Act, Title VI of the Maryland Solicitations Act. Title VI of the Business Regulation article, I should say, is the Maryland Solicitations Act. That's in the Annotated Code of Maryland. And then the Code of Maryland Regulations, Title I, Subtitle II, Chapter 4, is where all the charity and paid fundraiser regs are found. And you can actually go online and order a book if you wanted to get one, which has the law and the regulations as of today in there for ease of access and finding. One other plug here, I guess, real quick. This is in the vein of what paid fundraisers can do online, but similarly applies to charitable organizations. If you're joining us and you're with a charity, the online registration system One Stop went live in August. Been doing online filings now for a few years, almost a few years. And just a few things to point out process-wise. If you've already submitted a paper application, don't go do another one online. We'll process that paper app. Our communications through the new system come by way of email. The renewal reminders are generated. Compliance letters are generated all by email, and they're coming from the registration system to the email address of record for the filer, for the organization. If your organization's already registered, don't do a new application. If you need a one-stop account and kind of step called claiming your records, that allows you to access all your records and file through the online system for your charity. We don't want you to do new registrations if you've already been registered, because it could create duplicate profiles. Duplicate profiles can create problems, makes you seem like you're not current when you might be, or other record keeping issues that ultimately we could fix, but why open that door and have you don't have to. So if you're online filing in One Stop and you've been registering with us previously, don't do a new registration. Access the system, file a renewal, and if you can't, reach out to us, and I'll have our contact information up here at the end. Reach out to us by email or by phone, and try to get that problem solved so that you can get into the system. It may just be that we have somebody else as a record holder, and we need to update our records to make a new person the record holder in our system. So the other thing to think about here, if you're owing part of an annual filing from a prior year, we may just ask you to finish that filing outside of the system. The main goal in doing something like that is we're trying to avoid a double payment. Same reason I said if you filed a paper application, just let us process it. Don't go do it again online, because if you wrote a check and we haven't processed it yet, the system's going to have no idea you already paid and already renewed, and it may let you file again online, and then you paid twice, and we got to process a refund, and you got to wait to get your money back, and nobody wants to do either of those, right? So a couple other points of housekeeping. I mentioned on the last slide, and I'll show it later at the end too, DL Charity _SOS, like Secretary of State, at maryland.gov is the main Charitable Organization Division email address. And you can reach out to that even if you're a professional solicitor or fundraising counsel, and that'll get routed to the right place to be answered. So this kind of goes down to step-by-step of the basic accessing of One Stop. And there's user guides on our charity page. That link right there, sos.maryland.gov/charity /pages/default.aspx is the charity division homepage. So if you ever wanted to find out something about charitable organizations from our agency, from the Secretary of State, stuff that we deal with, that's a good landing spot. That link right there, sos.maryland.gov/charities /pages/default.aspx. Go there. User guides for online filing with step-by-steps and pictures on navigating the system or claiming a record or filing a renewal, or in this case for paid fundraisers, accounting reports, annual registrations, things of that nature as well. And if you're a paid fundraiser, you want to use that user guide. There's one for account setup and record claiming. There's one for filing annual registrations as a charity, or initial registrations as a charity. And there's also one for the paid fundraisers and how to file the various things that they file. Take a check at those user guides. They're good guides. They do walk you through step by step, and they have some photos in there to help you see what's going on. Because I'm a visual learner. If you tell me something, I still need to see it all play out or happen. And those guides give you a good step by step with the pictures of what you would be seeing on the screen, which is what makes them so valuable to use. And the other tool with One Stop that is possible is you can actually authorize additional individuals to file online and have access to these records. This is particularly helpful on the charity side, as more than one person on your board, they may need access at various times for various things, and whoever our record holder is can actually delegate other users. Some specific bells and whistles for the paid fundraisers. The ability to add contracts at any time. You just go online, add a contract, and submit it. Fundraising notices and accounting reports are tied together. So if you file your fundraising notice for a new contract as a professional solicitor online, the system will make sure you fill out an interim accounting report. It'll make sure you fill out a final accounting report. Those are some of the compliance steps that tend to get missed, or tend to have been missed from the paper filing world. So the online system makes sure it tracks that for you, so that you give us an interim accounting report every year when you're filing your registration as a professional solicitor, and then the final accounting, which is due within 90 days of the contract ending. So it has those tools help you file on time and manage that and make sure you stay compliant with the filing requirements of being a professional solicitor or fundraising counsel. And the online system actually helps somebody understand those duties. Not long ago, I was talking to somebody and they got a message and they had to file interim accounting reports and they had no idea. And so they learned because of the system, oh, I need to actually file an interim accounting report as a professional solicitor with my registration every year. So it does that. It keeps you straight as much as a system can do that. Can't do it all for you, but it'll help keep that organized. And just like with solicitors on the charity side as well, the forms they're meant to kind of go change as you go. If you answer yes to a question, it may ask for additional information. If you answer no, it may not. If the form is meant to be dynamic, I believe is the word. It kind of changes as you go through the form based on the way you answer questions. So the form is built to take you down the right path based on the way you answer all the questions. So if you're answering those questions correctly, it's going to take you down the right path. Make sure you pay the right fee or submit the right attachments and have you attach those things in a particular area on the field. So the form is trying to capture the right information regardless of what type of filer you are. And so that's the basics of what's happening there. So now we're going to talk about professional solicitors and fundraising counsels. What are we doing? And before I dive too deep into this, I want to go and just kind of read out the definition of what is a fundraising counsel and what is a professional solicitor. And the reason I want to do this is that folks, in particular on the charity side, tend to have questions about whether or not they have to do this type of filing. And I want to make sure that we kind of get that up front and maybe alleviate some worry for some folks on the charity side. A fundraising counsel is somebody that for pay, which is a very key phrase in there, for pay. So we've already eliminated anybody volunteering for a charity. If you're a volunteer, you're not getting paid, then you're not a fundraising counsel or professional solicitor. So you got to be doing it for pay. Somebody who for pay advises a charitable organization about a charitable solicitation in Maryland or holds plans or manages a charitable solicitation in Maryland, but does not directly solicit or receive charitable contributions from the public. That's a fundraising counsel. So you're holding, planning, or managing, but not directly soliciting or receiving the charitable contributions from the public. So maybe helping word or written solicitation, maybe tools for donor engagement, maybe target marketing type of ideas, who to contact or things of that nature, but not making the actual ask. And that's a fundraising counsel. Again, it's somebody who's doing that for pay. But if you are, what does a fundraising counsel not include? An attorney, because they're giving legal advice, investment counselor, bankers. The key one in here too, as well, for charities is you're not a fundraising counsel if you're a salaried officer or employee of a charitable organization that keeps a permanent office in the state. In other words, if you are with the charity, you're on the board, you're an employee of that charity, and you get paid by that charity, but part of your duties may also include raising money. You're an employee of the charity. You're not a fundraising counsel. So that fundraising counsel is usually an outside party, not somebody with the charity, same as professional solicitor. So for pay, but not an employee of the organization. And so the definition goes on longer, a little bit longer there, but trying to get down to the what is and what is not. And then for professional solicitors, similarly, it's somebody who does it for pay. Again, eliminating people that volunteer to do this for charities. A volunteer is not a professional solicitor, just like it's not a fundraising counsel because they're not doing it for pay. But a professional solicitor, what's a little different than a fundraising counsel, is that the solicitor may also advise a charitable organization. It may also hold, plan, or manage, but it also solicits and or receives contributions for a charitable organization. The professional solicitor is making the ask on behalf of the charity. So not just helping you target an audience or market or come up with wording. They are also making the call on your behalf. They're making the ask for the donation. And that's really what differentiates a professional solicitor from a fundraising counsel. And just like a fundraising counsel, a salaried officer or employee of the charitable organization that keeps a permanent office in the state is not a professional solicitor. So an employee of that organization, not a professional solicitor, because you're an employee of the charity. You're not an outside party that engages in a contract with the organization to raise money on its behalf. So key distinctions: what is a counsel? What is a solicitor? Solicitor is usually making the ask. Think about a company that makes a phone call and asks you to donate on the phone. That's a professional solicitor. If they're not the charity themselves calling, that might be a professional solicitor, whereas a fundraising counsel isn't reaching out the donors directly. So now we've kind of covered that aspect. I hope that makes it a little clearer, I guess, for our charity folks on here, that if you're working with the charity or for the charity as a board member or even a volunteer or just an employee of the organization, you're not one of these things. Even if you're getting paid by the organization, and you may do some of this work, you're with the organization, you're not a professional solicitor or fundraising counsel. So fundraising counsels, they register annually. The registration expires on the first anniversary of its effective date. So let's say today we processed the registration and a fundraising counsel became registered. Their registration would expire a year from today. And they would have to file annually to maintain that registration in Maryland. Fundraising counsels are required to register prior to providing services to charitable organizations. So in Maryland, if somebody's going to act as a fundraising counsel for solicitations that are going to occur in Maryland, they would need to be registered before doing that. And there's an application that is filed to be registered. There's a registration fee of $250 payable to the Secretary of State. And then for a new or renewing registration for a fundraising counsel, copies of the fundraising agreements, the contracts that a charity and the fundraising counsel have together, are to be submitted by the fundraising counsel as part of their registration. And that registration is going to ask also for names of each officer and employee. Names of new officers or employees must be submitted to the office within 10 days after the employee work begins. So a fundraising counsel's agreement, it's required to submit a copy of each fundraising agreement by the 10th day after the agreement is made or the start of a charitable solicitation, whichever one is earlier. So those two factors, whichever one comes first, that's when that new contract must be submitted to us. And all agreements between a fundraising counsel and charitable organization shall include the names and addresses of the parties, the services to be provided, the number of persons to be involved in providing the services, the time when the services are to be provided, and the method and formula for compensation. These are all the elements of a contract between a charity and a fundraising counsel that the law is stipulating in here. The other key element is that a fundraising counsel is prohibited from receiving compensation based upon a percentage of contributions received as a result of the services provided. Typically, a fundraising counsel is getting paid either a flat fee or an hourly fee, whatever it is, but it's not tied to, it can't be tied to the percentage of money raised from the solicitations that the fundraising counsel advised on. I think I said that the right way. Professional solicitors. So we talked about the difference. The professional solicitor is the one that's making usually the phone call asking for donations, but I'm sure there are other ways that a professional solicitor can directly solicit people on behalf of an organization in Maryland. The it's the same registration form, but it's a different set of requirements for a professional solicitor. Their registration also expires on the first anniversary of its effective date. So same thing, if they filed today and were approved today, or whenever they were approved the first time, their registration's due a year from that day thereafter. Professional solicitors are also going to register with a form. It's online. With that form, they're also going to have to submit a surety bond. They have to be insured, or an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $25,000. There's also a registration fee with the form for $350. And that's regardless. And the same with fundraising counsels. It's $250, with solicitors at $350. Whether you have one contract or 100 contracts, that's the annual registration fee. For being a counsel is $250, for being a solicitor $350. And it's going to submit any fundraising agreements it has. And if it's an annual registration, it's going to submit those interim accounting reports that we talked about as part of its annual registration. It's not going to have any with its initial registration, but it may have some with its annual registration that have to be submitted. So I mentioned the surety bond in the amount of $25,000 running to the state of Maryland. The Act authorizes submission of a $25,000 irrevocable letter of credit if you want to do that instead of the surety bond. Solicitors must have either one of those, the surety bond or irrevocable letter of credit, in place as long as the registration is in effect. An application to register must list the name of each current officer, agent, member, associate solicitor, and employee who works in fundraising. So if you're a professional solicitor, you have folks fundraising on your behalf, that application needs to mention everybody. Names of new officers, agents, associate solicitors, employees submitted within 10 days after the individual begins employment. So there's annual registration for professional solicitors as well. A separate slide for this because of the different requirements here the solicitor has. It's a little different. Fundraising counsel, initial and renewal registration, pretty comparable. The annual registration for a professional solicitor is a little different in the sense that professional solicitor must attach accounting reports for any of their active fundraising agreements. So if a professional solicitor is filing a renewal of their annual registration and they have an open contract, the annual registration in our system is going to make sure that they submit an interim accounting report for that contract. So the system, again, it does a good job of asking for that. If the contract is in the system, if it was submitted through the system as a new contract, it's going to know that the interim accounting report is required. If it's an old contract that's been renewed a bunch of times and it was submitted to us by paper, keep submitting paper interim accounting reports. Because the system, if it was submitted by paper, is not going to know to ask you for it because it was submitted by paper prior to the system being a thing. So annual registration, same thing, expire on the first anniversary of their effective date. So, I use the example that if you filed a new registration today and we processed it, your next registration will be due a year from the day. If by a year from the day you filed your annual registration, well, it'll be due a year from next year, right? And so on down the line. So it'll continue to be renewed for a year. Every year you're filing annual registrations. With professional solicitors and fundraising counsels, that registration expires on that anniversary date. Without a current registration, you shouldn't be soliciting in Maryland. So some common mistakes that we run into, especially on the solicitor side: timely submission of contracts, or not submitting all the information that's required, not providing scripts or text to charitable solicitations, with the copies of contracts. There is wording in the law that requires a contract to include the script or the text used for charitable solicitations. So if you're on the charity side, you just want to make sure all these things are covered, right? You want to make sure the solicitor or counsel is actually registered with us to act as such in Maryland. And you want to make sure that those contracts are signed. You'll actually submit one as part of your annual registration as a charity if fundraising agreements are in place. So submission of fundraising agreements, a professional solicitor is required to submit a copy of each fundraising agreement by the 10th day after the agreement is made or the start of the charitable solicitation, again, whichever is earlier. So the earlier of those two dates. The text that a professional solicitor or associate solicitor uses in the solicitation shall be attached to the agreement, and it shall include a few statements. If you're a professional solicitor, that script needs to explain the name of the charitable organization for which you're soliciting contributions. I know that sounds obvious, but it's required. Got to say the name of the charity you're raising money on behalf of if you're a professional solicitor. The specific charitable purpose to be advanced also seems obvious, but required, and for good reason. And a statement that the person who solicits charitable contributions is a paid fundraiser, and on request will provide a copy of the charitable organization's financial statement. So this last phrase also important. The solicitor would be disclosing that they are a paid fundraiser and that somebody could get a copy of the charity's financial statements upon request. So a few more things here, a couple more things here, I should say. An agreement between a professional solicitor and a person engaged to receive or hold contributions resulting from that professional solicitor's agreement. That agreement should be attached as well to a professional solicitor registration, oftentimes referred to as a caging company. So if the charity engages with a professional solicitor to raise money on their behalf, and the professional solicitor engages with someone or something to receive or hold those contributions, that agreement between the solicitor and that company, or the solicitor company and charity, needs to also be included with the solicitor's registration. All agreements between the professional solicitors and the charitable organizations should include the names and addresses of the parties, the minimum percentage of gross receipts from charitable solicitations that will be used by the charitable organization exclusively to advance its charitable purposes, and the text that the professional solicitor or associate solicitor will use in each charitable solicitation. So I talked about fundraising counsels not getting paid a percentage of total contributions received. Well, some professional solicitors are paid that way. Maybe they get paid, get paid X percent, whatever percent it is on the dollar of contributions that are brought in. So the contract has to explain the minimum percentage that's going to go to the charity from the funds raised. If you're going to submit a fundraising notice, fundraising agreement as a professional solicitor, say you're a professional solicitor and you engage in a new contract with a charitable organization to act as a professional solicitor on their behalf, what do you have to do? Well, before starting that public solicitation, the professional solicitor must file a fundraising notice form for each fundraising campaign. The fundraising notice form requests information about the type of fundraising methods used and the dates for the fundraising campaigns. The fundraising agreement, the contract, is submitted with that fundraising notice. And you can do all this through One Stop. Submit copies of subcontracts or other contracts in furtherance of that agreement between the charity and the solicitor. So we talked about a third party maybe receiving contributions, caging company or something like that. If there's a contract that deals with that, it needs to be included with that fundraising notice form. And so anything that's in furtherance may also be a subcontractor. Maybe the professional solicitor subcontracts to others to do the fundraising on their behalf too. So any subcontract, any contract in furtherance of that agreement between the charity and the professional solicitor must be attached. Talked about accounting reports. These are for professional solicitors. Fundraising counsel do not submit accounting reports. Professional solicitors are required to submit both final and interim accounting reports. So I talked at the beginning about the online system helping make sure you file interim accounting reports on time with your annual registration. So the reports account for funds received and dispersed during certain time periods of the fundraising campaign. The same accounting reports used for interim and final accounting reports. You're just going to indicate which one it is on the accounting report form you file. Final accounting is due within 3 months after the fundraising campaign. It must account, I should say, not just should, but must account for all funds received and dispersed during the entire fundraising campaign. The professional solicitor and an authorized representative of the charity must sign and certify the accounting report. Interim accounting reports are to be submitted with an application to register as a professional solicitor for each ongoing fundraising campaign at the time the professional solicitor is filing its annual registration. And the interim reports should account for a fund campaign to within 3 months before the professional solicitor's registration expires. So if their registration expired today, that interim accounting report would have to be sometime within the last 3 months. Those numbers would have to be current through. Interim accounting reports also must be signed and certified by the solicitor and an authorized representative of the charity. So charitable solicitation records for professional solicitors. Professional solicitors do have to keep, for each drive, campaign, or event, the following records: all compensation received for services rendered and expenses incurred, the name and address of each associate solicitor, the amount of compensation paid to each associate solicitor and the dates when they were made, those payments were made, name, address, phone number of each person solicited who made a pledge or a contribution, the date of each charitable solicitation, each amount pledged or contributed, and if a refund was requested, the date the refund was made. These records shall be kept for at least 3 years after the end of the fundraising drive, campaign, or event. So if you're a professional solicitor, you have these records that you need to keep for the amount of time that you are soliciting on behalf of the charity, and for an additional 3 years after that ends. So for that additional 3 years, that professional solicitor needs to keep that record. If you're a charity that solicits, you're probably familiar with that 3-year wording because you're supposed to have your books for 3 years as well, should they need to be provided to us. Something that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm going to put on, we put on here, is something called a public safety solicitor. And this is essentially a professional solicitor, but one that solicits on behalf of a public safety organization. What's a public safety organization? Think fire department, volunteer fire company, maybe local police or fire union or something like that, that may raise money for a public safety purpose for a public safety organization. Folks that raise money on behalf of those organizations are considered public safety solicitors. They also must file every year. They also must have a surety bond in the amount of $25,000. They must also include all agreements when they register. The big difference here on the filing requirement is that's $100 for each application. So a public safety solicitor is essentially filing once per contract and paying $100 for each contract, whereas the professional solicitor and fundraising counsel are just registering once annually, and the registration is good for a year regardless of the amount of contracts. Public safety solicitors, if you got 10 contracts, that's $100 times 10, and so on and so forth with the payment fee. Public safety solicitor with current registration is not required to execute and submit additional surety bonds or irrevocable letters of credit for each public safety organization. provided that the separate application is submitted for each public safety organization. So, in other words, even if they submit for 10 organizations that they have a public safety solicitor contract with, they only have to submit one surety bond or irrevocable letter of credit to cover all those contracts. Their registration also expires on the first anniversary of its approval date. Public safety solicitations. Public safety solicitors shall include in all written solicitations and receipts a toll-free number of the public safety solicitor within the local area code in which public safety contribution is solicited for individuals or businesses solicited to obtain verification of the authenticity of that public safety solicitor solicitation and make any complaints needed. They must also include with that written solicitation receipt a statement that information submitted under the Maryland Solicitations Act is available from us here at the Secretary of State's office, and provide the address and phone number of the Secretary of State's office. A public safety solicitor may not also solicit public safety contributions unless the script of an oral solicitation and copy of a written solicitation is approved by the public safety organization itself. Got to have that approval before you do public safety solicitations on behalf of a public safety organization. The public safety solicitation does need to also include the specific purpose that's to be advanced. Sounds similar to a professional solicitor script, right? And a statement that the person is soliciting on behalf of a public safety organization. They can't say they're with them, they're soliciting on their behalf. So they need to say that much. So a copy of the approved script of an oral solicitation and a copy of a written solicitation shall be made available to the Secretary of State's office upon request. So a few good tools and resources before we wrap up and conclude here. The good place to go for legal advice or counsel on compliance matters regarding this Maryland Solicitations Act, Community Law Center, Maryland Nonprofits, or the Maryland Association of Nonprofit Organizations, some may know them as, Maryland Nonprofit Development Center, local bar associations are all good places where one can go to get some legal advice or counsel should you ever need that, whether, especially as a charitable organization, good place to go to get some help if needed. So, contact information for our agency, that 5521 number is the main phone number to the office. If you want to call directly the Charitable Organizations Division itself, you just call 5534 instead of 5521. And if you call directly to Charities, 5534. If you didn't get an answer, you leave a message. One of our charity officers will call you back. If not the same day, usually the next day. On occasion, it's a little longer. We get some busy filing periods. In fact, we have one coming here this week for charities where it's going to start. We're going to start to get a lot of applications. May 15th and November 15th are kind of those benchmarks every year, and busy filing period will run kind of now through early July, mid-July, before it starts to slow down again, and then picks back up again in November. It really runs through January every year as well. Busy filing time. So those are the periods where, it may not be the same day, maybe the next day, and worst case scenario, a second day before you got a call back or even an email back. So we answer everything as fast as we can, but we really do try to answer everything as fast as we can. And then before we get into questions here too, just want to thank everybody again for joining us. I see some stuff in the chat there. Robbie, I'm going to have, if there's anything that's a recurring theme, if you want to shout it out now, and if not, we'll conclude and just leave some time for anybody that wants to stay on and ask some questions on the side to ask some questions while we're all here together. Was there anything, Robbie, in particular that stood out that you want me to address as a whole?
No, I don't think so.
All right, cool. Well, if anybody has any questions that they didn't want to ask, that email address, that phone number, by all means, reach out. Like I said, we're going to conclude here, and I'm going to hang for a few if anybody just wants to ask anything not on the recording to me on the side. That we're going to hang for a few more. We got a little time here to stay, and we'll do that. Just in conclusion, again, reminder, town hall presentation contents for informational purposes only, not intended to be legal advice. The recording will get posted on the Secretary of State's website, on the main charity division page for the Office of the Secretary of State. This recording should get posted within a week from now. I just threw the direct link to the main charity page in the chat box again there for you. It was on those earlier slides, but I want to throw it in the chat as well. Save that. That's a good landing spot for looking up stuff on our website, and especially for finding user guides for those of you doing online filings. We definitely encourage you to go online. If you're ever stuck, lost, confused, reach out and ask. Don't guess and test. We don't want you to get yourself spun in a circle on there. If you're unsure, reach out. We'll try to get you in the right direction and help you work through it. Once you get comfortable using the online system, a lot easier to file moving forward once you do it successfully once. Again, just thank you again for your time today. Thanks for your interest in joining us for these charity-related matters. And that'll conclude our town hall recording for today. So thank you, everybody, again. Take care of yourselves.